Now, last week, we reported on You and Yours that a teenager with learning disabilities, autism and epilepsy had died while being treated at an NHS hospital. Connor Sparrowhawk, who was 18, was found unconscious in the bath at a unit called an Assessment and Treatment Centre in Oxford. There's been an independent investigation into what happened to Connor, and its findings have just been released. It says his death could have been prevented and that there were significant failings in his care and treatment at the centre. It was run by Southern Health NHS Foundation Trust. Sara Ryan is Connor's mother, and she told me about him.
Oh, he's just a lovely guy, really. Very funny, very quirky, gentle. He loved buses, he loved London. He loved Eddie Stobart. He was just a very entertaining, hilarious, happy boy.
Now, an assessment and treatment centre is meant to be a short-term place, although we've reported on this programme how some people are remaining there, living there in effect. Why was Connor in this particular one?
When he turned 18 in November, his behaviour he became very unhappy and anxious. And over the space of those 5 or 6 months, he became increasingly sort of unpredictable in his actions and very unlike himself. And he became very difficult for us to manage. We couldn't get any help to look after him at all, really. And school was struggling to be able to keep him in school. And eventually he punched a teaching assistant and was excluded. And the following week, we had him admitted to the unit.
So what were you hoping would happen there?
We hoped that they would get to the bottom of why he'd suddenly become so unhappy and anxious. We hoped that they would come up with some strategies to help us and him manage that unhappiness.
And what did happen, in fact?
Very little happened. They said he was an adult, so he could choose what he wanted to do. He chose to largely watch DVDs there because he was very unhappy. And he just, week after week, we'd go to team meetings where they would talk about what they were going to do, and they didn't really do anything.
So how long was Connor there before he died?
107 days, around about 4 months.
Tell me what happened then. How did he die and how did you find out about it?
The night before, we watched Andy Murray play Wimbledon. The next morning he was due to go on a visit to the Oxford Bus Company, which is a company he loved all his life, really. He apparently got into the bath, and I got a call at work from one of the staff members to say that he was on his way to the JR in an ambulance.
The JR, the John Radcliffe Hospital?
Yeah, they'd found him unconscious. I went to the hospital in a taxi with somebody I work with, and was told by the consultant that they couldn't do anything about him. They'd done all they could, and he was effectively dead, so they switched the machine off while I was with him.
The report into his death has now been published. Can I ask you what you make of it then?
We think it's a very fair report. It's a very damning report. It clearly states that Connor wasn't looked after, that he shouldn't have died. It says it all, really.
The report says that Connor's death could have been prevented, and it says that he was not properly assessed and that the fact that he was epileptic was not flagged up or regarded as a cause of concern, a reason that he should be properly supervised. Now, the Trust say that they've done a lot to improve things since Connor died. They say they've strengthened their management team. They say there's better training for staff, there's better risk assessment for patients, there's specialist training in epilepsy care. What do you say to all that?
No hospital provision should operate in the way they were operating. There should not be a hospital operation in this country in the 21st century where staff aren't trained to look after learning disabled people with epilepsy, because 1 in 4 people with learning disabilities has epilepsy. This was specialist provision. We're astonished at the level of incompetence that was demonstrated in that unit. So to hear about the measures that they've put in place, these are measures that should have been put in place already. To put them in place now it just doesn't mean an awful lot to us.
Now, the Trust, in a statement, expressed their deep regret and apologies to you. What did they tell you about Connor's death immediately after it happened?
Oh, they didn't tell us anything. He was in A&E at that point. They didn't tell us anything. We did read in the board minutes about 2 or 3 weeks after he died that a patient had died in the unit and it looked like natural causes and all due processes were followed, which was obviously completely untrue. They've sort of sent the odd letter with expressing condolences and things, but there's not been any meaningful engagement with them at all.
What do you think needs to change as a result of your experience?
I think our experience is extreme, and I think our experience has been atrocious, obviously, and catastrophic, but I don't think it's unusual. I think the care for learning disabled young people in this country is absolutely appalling. I think that they're not really seen as fully human. I think that they're disregarded. There's no aspirations for them. People find it too easy to ignore them, abuse them, forget about them, and close off any opportunities or any meaningful life, I think. So whilst I don't think this is just about what happened to Connor, I think this is a much broader issue about learning disability provision, post-Winterbourne, post every other atrocity story that's emerged over the past sort of 30 or 40 years.
Sara Ryan, Connor Sparrowhawk's mum. We invited the Southern Health NHS Foundation Trust to come on the programme. They didn't want to. They sent us a statement, as I said, and they say they accept the findings of the report into the care provided for Connor. They apologise unreservedly to his friends and family for their failure to keep him safe. It's 23 minutes to 1 now. This is You and Yours on BBC Radio 4.